when you break your foot, you go to your doctor and you get a cast and you get healed, but there's no stigma attached to it. You just broke your foot. But when you have money problems, the feelings of shame, embarrassment, stupidity, worthlessness, hopelessness, it's awful. And that's what spirals people into staying isolated and not getting the help. Respectfully, I don't want a 20-year relationship with a client. It clearly means I'm not doing my job. Like, we want them to figure it out and be happy and move on. Hopefully they have fond thoughts of us, but move on and have a happy life. That's success. It's about taking the responsibility that you financially can afford to. Sometimes that is paying it all and paying with interest. Fair enough. That was the agreement. But sometimes life gets in the way. So maybe, if we go down the line of intervention, maybe the next is you can pay 100% of the principal, like a debt management program, but you need a break on the interest rates. And maybe you can't pay, in your example, you can't pay the $40,000, but you can pay $15,000 over the course of 5 years. Okay, that's still taking responsibility. And sometimes that's the only option, and that's okay.
This is the Personal Finance Show.
Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. Stacy Yanchuk-Oleksy wants you to see a nonprofit credit counselor if you have credit problems. Stacy is Director of Education and Community Awareness at the Credit Counselling Society. If you've listened to episode 76 of the show, you know that I had credit problems 11 years ago. I filed a consumer proposal with a licensed insolvency trustee under the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act of Canada. My case was severe, so I skipped the first step that many may take, and that's going to see a credit counselor first to discuss options. There are a lot of great people out there looking to actually help you get out of debt. Whether you see a counselor or a trustee, most will help you make the right move for your debt situation. As Stacy and I discussed in the interview, just make sure that you don't pay anything up front for debt solutions, and don't just click on the first link in the online search. There are websites and companies that appear to be offering debt settlement solutions, but they are just payday lenders in disguise. Make sure you find out about the company that you're dealing with. Legitimate trustees and nonprofit credit counselors have nothing to hide. They have names of staff and locations, and they're active on social media. Stacy is very proud of the free workshops and educational resources that the Credit Counselling Society provides in order to try to prevent Canadians from getting into unmanageable debt in the first place. The most important thing to me is that you know what your options are when you're in trouble. And I fully recommend you take advantage of free consultations with as many organizations as you can handle. Go meet them in person and talk to them about solutions. Everyone's situation is different, and the more information you have from multiple sources, the better you will be at determining which solution works for you, and more importantly, the one you can live with. Stacy joined me in the studio in Hamilton to tell her personal finance story.
Grew up in rural Alberta and we didn't have allowances, so money just really wasn't talked about. Like, my family didn't talk about money at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is very strange.
So your parents are doing something for work, but you don't know if they're getting paid.
And I knew that they were getting paid, and I knew that they were hard workers. And they were also in business. So when I got older, that's when I started to develop this sense of money. And I think it really started when I started my first little job, which was babysitting, kids in the community.
Okay, so you're like a preteen or a teen?
I'm a preteen, yeah. I'm probably 12-ish by then. And I had, back then it was cash, right? So, cash, what do you do with this? This is my cash that I earned.
You've never really had to spend anything up until now?
No.
You need something, you're like, Mom and Dad, I would like that.
Yeah. No, I don't have children of my own, but I understand that, some parents will say, this kid's a saver and this kid's a spender. Almost like a genetic pre-program.
It does, I do feel like it comes... it's not like a parent influence. Part of it is just you and your personality from birth almost.
Well, and I believe that, and I'm not a big consumer. I have stuff. I'm certainly not...
A Luddite?
Yeah. I do have stuff, but, I've never been big on buying stuff. I don't get a charge out of buying stuff. In fact, it creates a bit of... angst and
Yeah.
pain.
Oh, I gotta trade
Yeah.
my hard-earned money for this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're more on that side of it.
I was. So I had toys to play with. We lived out on an acreage. We lived on a couple of acres. So really,
Yeah.
it was go outside and play.
Okay.
So money really wasn't a big thing until I started making my own. And as soon as I made my first, 20, then I got to start paying for some things, and not, the basics. My parents were very gracious about that, but you want something new, then you get to pay for it. And you want these clothes, then you get to pay for it. Save up and pay.
So do you have a memory of something that you might have bought or saved up for?
I do. I love music. Like I figure in my retirement I want to get a PhD in I heard ethnomusicology. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But I figure I want to study Nina Simone and just get a PhD or something. Because I love music. And so my first big purchase that I saved money for was a stereo system.
Nice.
And it had the 2 cassette players, because back then we were still making mixtapes.
Double cassettes. Yeah. So you could dub
Right?
one to the next.
Oh, yeah. And we used to do it old school where you'd cut the cassette, what is that, the ribbon?
Really?
And then, and then you tape it together. You never did that?
I never did it. You could do that? I would have been so afraid to do it.
You can hear
the
it.
right
There's
way.
a little, there's a little skip on the tape, but oh yes, you could do that. One little piece of tape around, and then
okay.
Or you'd be pushing stop and record, or you'd record off the radio. It's so.
Well, yeah, I remember that stuff, but I never did get the cut. And that would have been interesting.
I mean, I don't have a lot of talent in a lot of things, but I got to tell you, Bo, I am amazing at making playlists.
You perfected the playlist.
I'm a really
you
great
started at 12 or 13,
right? So. I think I started that earlier, but I remember saving money I was in my teens already because I was working.
Yeah.
I was working at Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh,
God.
I don't know if you're allowed to even say that now. It's KFC. If you legally you can't say chicken.
Is it really?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think they changed it for that reason. I don't know. That could be one of the urban legends. It's they can't say chicken because it's not chicken or something like that.
Oh, that's so
But
funny.
I know they did rebrand to you don't really see the full words anymore.
No.
So tell us the secrets. What
the secret is? Yeah. Well, I'm guessing there's the spice blend.
Yes.
But, oh God, I just smell like burnt and deep fried chicken.
Just fried food. Everything's fried.
Yeah.
And even that, what would have been a vegetable? A coleslaw.
The coleslaw was a vegetable.
That was it.
And the macaroni salad had pieces of carrot. I think they were maybe genetically carrot. I don't know, but
they look like carrot.
They looked like carrot.
Yeah,
yeah, carrot facsimile, right?
So, how long did you work there?
I worked there. Well, I was in high school. I think it was about grade 10. So probably a good year or two.
Nice.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, I was thinking, lots of kids we're all born with certain things, right? Some people are born with beauty. Some people are born into riches. Some people are born with tremendous talent. And I was born with a hard work ethic.
Okay.
And a good attitude. So that's my ticket.
So you did the babysitting.
I did.
And then KFC. So you probably got a lot of early experience with customer service. Did you drive through or front?
We didn't have drive through back then.
drive through back then.
Well, at least at the KFC I worked at. And I worked I remember after babysitting, my mom and dad were in business together. And my mom was the receptionist, and she decided, lucky woman, got to take the summer off.
Okay.
So I got to go fill in for her job.
Oh, great.
Oh my God. I mean, it's really where I developed my love of office supplies, like pencils. I have a pencil problem. If you see in my purse, I have a pencil case.
Really?
With pencils.
So pencils, not pens?
I'll take
Pencils and
pens from
pens?
hotels to give out to
Yes.
participants when I teach a workshop.
Okay.
But I ask for my pencils back. I hoard 2 things. It's chapstick and pencils.
Well, I need to drill down on this. So are we
They'll lay on my couch and let's talk about that.
Well, we used to exactly. Let's talk about pencils.
Yeah.
So are you going and buying expensive pencils?
Oh no. They are
okay.
cheap as borscht.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
So what is it about pencils?
that I can change my mind.
Yes.
I can erase and change my mind.
I like that.
Yeah. I also like the feel of the pencil on paper
Sure.
better than pen, but I really love being able to change my mind and erase what I wrote, and
So you still write with pencils?
I do all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard to find people who write at all.
Oh, I know.
First of all, and then with pencils, well, that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And so, so you got obsessed with pencils at an early age. Did this have to do with KFC or
No, it had to do with being my dad's receptionist,
Dad
right? So I got
receptionist.
to
Yes.
type on things and organize sticky notes and touch pencils and pens and just organize the office.
So you
drawer.
love office supplies
really do.
and administration,
Obsessive.
and that kind of stuff. Well, that's really good that you got that opportunity early
Yeah.
because you might not have, been exposed to that till after, say, university, maybe until
absolutely.
maybe you got an office job to start
Yeah.
in the workforce. So now you have this taste. You're like, I like administration, but just for a summer.
Yeah, I did that for a summer to cover off my mom. And then I was lucky enough, now I'm bouncing all over the place, but then in high school, I was junior high moving into high school. I actually volunteered for summer as a leader in training, an LIT, for Parks and Recreation. And then the next summer, I applied for a job, like a job as the camp counselor, and I got the job.
So this is outside. This is not in an office at
No,
all.
no.
So you like the office, but you also like being outdoors.
I was, yeah. And it wasn't the office per se. Honestly, it was the office supplies, and I got to work with my dad.
I see.
And it was a welding shop. So
I was going to ask you what business it was.
Yeah, it was
so
welding.
You're like I think this is unique because you're not really loving like pushing the papers. You're liking the materials.
Really do.
That's it. I like that. I mean, we all have, there's certain things that the right tools, right?
Yes.
I always go like we always need the right tools to do anything. Like
Yeah.
cooking is a perfect example, right? If I don't have the right tools to make pie crusts or even a pan, like if you've always just had a pan that burns all the time, you're probably going to hate food.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
hate cooking.
And exactly. So you have the office supplies, but you're not like bound in the office. You're not hiding away. You're not looking to sit behind a desk.
No.
You went out and explored. So how was the counseling?
Oh, best job.
Really?
Job. Not best job now. I mean, I have a pretty cool gig now.
Yeah, sure.
But, I mean, as a teenager, and I was getting paid, call it $10-ish. When I hit Parks and Rec with the City of Edmonton, so I was out in the country, and then once I got my license, I got to go with City of Edmonton, and I was making $10 an hour. Back then, minimum wage was $5-ish.
Okay, yeah.
So we were making pretty decent.
Can you give us a date?
Oh, yeah. I graduated high school in 92. So, yeah, it would have been back in the late 80s, early 90s. Oh, and it was such a great gig. I got to be outside all the time, and I got to play with kids, and I had really great colleagues. And that, I mean, so many jobs taught me so many things, right?
Yeah.
From like KFC, which was, bless them. It was a good job for high schools, like a teenager.
Yeah.
But I smelled like chicken all the time.
Of course.
And I didn't eat KFC for years.
No way. But you do like do you like chicken?
Yeah, now I do.
It's probably worse for like if you're a vegetarian and having to work KFC. I don't know. That sounds like torture, but
that sounds terrible. Yeah.
But it even turned you off of like any fried chicken.
It did for a while.
Yeah.
But what I learned is customer service, right? I mean, and then being my dad's receptionist, again, customer service, answering the phone, developing telephone manner.
So welding, what were the customers like? Were they individuals or businesses or both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not that I knew anything about the business. I mean, I learned how to weld and grind and do all that stuff, which was very
great
cool.
skill.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Like, could you weld something now?
I have a nameplate. Let's be clear. I'm not. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah, but
I have a
miles
name-
above
yeah.
me, for example.
But I come from a welding family. Like I've got uncles that are welders.
Okay.
My dad was. My brother is. Yeah, so I come from a trades family. So yeah, I have a nameplate that I welded, and it's got Stacy on it, and
That's
I welded the
awesome.
two sides together so it stands up.
I can't even imagine how that's done.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
We'll have a whole other episode about welding and how to weld your name into things. Or that's pretty cool. So the KFC taught you the customer service, and you're the camp counselor. You're learning about the world. And learning about working with kids and just maybe organization.
You know what? Truly, I mean, that's really where I started doing program development because I had to develop. The kids were with us, every day for the week, so you had to develop a program plan for the week, and then that included a sleepover. And as much as I love free play, you don't do free play for 5 days.
So program development. I mean, a lot of people have to do this in their jobs. You're basically like, how would you describe it? It's like you're scheduling things that might be engaging and entertaining for people. Is
That's
that
exactly
kind of
it.
Okay?
Yeah. So what I would do is do a schedule of Monday to Friday, AM and PM, and then start plunking in structured activities, so canoeing or campfire or whatever, and then for the unstructured stuff, then you start planning games and activities and that kind of thing. So I learned a lot from doing that, and it was a great time.
Yeah.
It was such a fun job, and what it did is it allowed me to pay for college and university.
Yeah, I was going to jump to your personal finances at this point. So you're you're saving money, you're probably spending the early babysitting money on things. And but do you remember the point where you started to save? Was it during these summer jobs?
It would be summer jobs, yeah. Absolutely. Because and back then, and granted, that's a while ago, but tuition was not what it is today.
No.
I mean, it's so expensive for students nowadays. But I was able to work every summer for 4 months, and that would cover my tuition for the next 8 months. And then I would work during the school year to pay for gas money and coffee money or whatever money.
That's great. I don't know that you can do that right now.
It depends,
what
right?
summer job you got and how much you're willing to work during the year.
Sure. And if your parents have helped you with RESPs. And I was really privileged, Bo. I got to live at home with my parents.
Okay, so
right?
that's good.
That saved me from student loans.
I always promote that because the stigma around even going back to live with your parents after, like it's some kind of failure or something. We need to be like, look at our situation and say, would it really benefit me in my the next 20 years if I spent like this time at home, and are my parents okay with it, and is everybody happy about it? Then fine. Like, don't let the stigma drive you, right?
I agree. And I was again, I was really lucky. I mean, I've heard the theory, before you're born you choose your parents, and if that's true, I made a pretty decent decision.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I was lucky. I had great parents who very much promoted post-secondary education. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a welder. And when the business, they had a couple of businesses, and when they had failed, they actually went back to their respective professions and, put food on the table for us.
I see.
Yeah.
So they both had actual physical practical work they could do.
They did.
So he could go do welding for somebody else.
That's right.
If the welding business that he was in was not working very well, and she could go do nursing, but I guess they combined their efforts for the reception / when the business was.
That's right.
Yeah, so they taught you, well, you said you had a good work ethic, whether it's genetic, and it seems like partially from them.
Oh, I think, let's be honest, I think it's mostly from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they taught me a good work ethic. And I remember my mom said to me, with the mum finger out, and she said, little girl, my job is to make you an independent woman so you don't have to depend on a man for money.
Love it.
And,
that.
that was pretty progressive back
then.
then.
That's a good early lesson.
It was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. She told me a couple other lessons that are maybe not fit for public consumption, but,
sure.
That was a great lesson. To be clear, it's not about hating men or not loving men.
No.
Like, I'm happily married to a great guy.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that I'm in it because I want to be. I'm not in it because I'm fiscally, I need to be here financially.
That's right. And I mean, I've probably said this too many times. I always go back to the movie Mona Lisa Smile with Julia Roberts, where the one character gets into, I think she gets into law school or med school, one of the two. Either way, it's fantastic for her. But she decides to stay home and be the housewife of the time. This is like 60s, 50s, 60s, I think, right?
Right.
And Julia Roberts is like, what are you doing? Like, you could go and do this. And she's like, well, I know that I can, and I'm making the choice.
Yeah.
And as long as it's somebody's choice, then that's exactly what you said, right? It's, I just, this whole patriarchy thing that's been forced upon everybody, I just don't want people to think of it as the default and the thing that they have to do. It's, you can choose to do whatever you like, right?
Well, I was out for lunch with a girlfriend, and she was saying, actually it was this weekend, and she said, I just want to stay at home and, make dinner and, have my home. And I know I'm throwing back women, 50 years. I'm like, actually, no, you're not.
No.
If you are choosing that, that's the point, right?
We
that's
all get
feminism.
To do that. Yeah, exactly.
Is you get to choose.
The feminism is a choice. Feminism is equality. It's not putting one above the other.
No.
It's not, putting down anyone. It's just trying to elevate everybody to the same level. And yeah, so I like that. I like talking about feminism, and I like that you got those lessons so early, and that you had a very strong, independent mother, or who wanted to convey that to you at least.
Oh, I was so lucky to have her as a mom. And then my dad, I would actually say, was probably more of a feminist than she was, ironically.
Great.
Because especially with, having a welding shop, and then he had an oil change shop, it was just, you're going to work here and you're going to figure out how to do this, and I'm going to teach you. So I remember once, it was actually after my mom passed away, we were welding, I think they were called pressure vessels at the time. And, I had to get on the grinder, and, I've got 2 feet and a heartbeat, so I'm getting on the grinder.
Sure.
And then like the miter saw, and I had some male relatives that said like, well, we can't teach you, you're a girl. And my dad's like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
This is how you use the saw.
How does gender affect your ability to do that, right? Because, a lot of parents might, or of that generation anyway, might have felt like they were protecting their kids
Sure.
by saying, "Oh, we'll take care of everything," but it doesn't really help, right?
No.
You got to throw them into the fire.
Well, and it's the analogy of the butterfly, right? The butterfly that's still in the cocoon needs to work its way out of the cocoon by work and moving its muscles. If it doesn't, or we help it by opening up the cocoon, it dies, right? It becomes prey because it doesn't have the muscles to spread open its wings.
It's got to work. Okay.
So to me, I see that as, and I think the butterfly analogy is so overused, like the word empowerment, right? But so it's not that, but to me, it's about, sometimes you got to struggle, and you need to do your own struggle to build your muscle so that you do fly wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was lucky that I had parents that didn't try and solve my problems. They made, they coached me or taught me how to solve my own. And that doesn't mean I don't need help sometimes, but I know when I need to ask.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was pretty lucky that way.
So where did you go to school and what'd you take?
I wanted to be a doctor when I was a little girl. So I went in the science program at the University of Alberta, so in Edmonton. Actually, forgive me, I went to college first, Grant MacEwan College, which is now MacEwan University.
Okay.
Did my first year there in sciences, and that was a lot of fun, but it was really hard. So then I moved over to the University of Alberta into environmental science.
Okay.
And that really didn't land. I mean, I can appreciate the program and all that, but it wasn't my fit. And actually it was my mom saying, Stacy, maybe you need to think about what you want to do. And this isn't it. Like, you're not happy. It's not vibing for you. So you're better with people. Maybe you should try and help people. I'm like, boom, like that was just this light. And I don't know if I needed permission or what it was, but then I moved into what's called a human ecology degree.
Okay.
So it used to be the old home economics.
Sure.
Which of course the joke is, oh, look, you have a degree in cooking and cleaning.
Well, a degree in home economics is so useful. I know somebody she's in her 80s right now, and she just knows how to do everything. So I wouldn't, but human ecology was an evolution of that program?
It was because home economics is very, gender segregated to women, of course.
It's a very housewife type of...
It is, and it's cooking, cleaning. Well, it's not really cleaning, but it's cooking, sewing. And for me, I did a major in family studies.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, it was a lot of... that. As soon as I landed into that program, I knew that that's where my home was.
Was there a goal for what kind of employment you would get, or just
I figured I'd be a social worker.
Sure, okay.
Mm-hmm. I figured I'd do protective services, back home in Alberta. But it didn't, it always works out as it's meant to, and that didn't work out. Because after my degree, my mom passed away the last day of my last year.
Oh, no.
Yeah, she passed away very quickly, but at least she didn't suffer, so that's positive. But I wasn't ready to go be a social worker somewhere in Alberta. So I moved straight into grad school and did my master's degree.
Nice.
And did my master's degree, and then I met my husband, and I moved out after my coursework we got married, and I moved out to BC, and that's really where I would say the money kicked in, and life kicked in, because I was 24 going on, I think 12 mentally some days, and not in terms of a marriage, but just like I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know how. You're
just floating still. Your master's was in what?
It was in family ecology.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a master's of science.
And do you have to pay for that, or did somebody sponsor you for that?
No, I paid for that.
Yeah.
I got a couple of scholarships, but again, it was working every summer. And then I was a research assistant and a teaching assistant during, so...
You get some money for that?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're coming out of school, your master's was the end of school?
Yes. I finished up my dissertation in BC.
But yeah. Did you have any debt then?
I didn't, no.
That's
no,
great.
I was, oh my goodness. But that, that doesn't speak to me, that speaks to, I think, the privilege that I grew up in, right? That I was able to live at home. And I got along great with my parents.
Well, I'd say yes, of course, but that is to be acknowledged. But you also worked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I have a.
Some people won't work at all, and they will maybe because not everybody can handle it.
Sure.
I get that, right? It's a big workload, right? You worked instead of getting a student loan or provincial loans or Canada government loans,
right.
Which you could have probably easily got.
Probably.
Yeah, either co-signed by your parents
sure.
or, if your parents made too much money to qualify for the funding. But it seems like they instilled that when you're not doing schoolwork and then, even in the evenings and weekends, was that how it was?
Oh, I worked, in the evenings. During university, I worked with people with disabilities. So I would work, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, with a young woman who had severe disabilities. So it would be respite care for her parents to go out. And then on Friday evenings, I would work, at the ACT Center back home in Edmonton. And it was called Fourth Night. And it was just this really big, wonderful social time with people with disabilities. And we got to host that. And, fantastic. The fact that I got paid was just a bonus. It was just a joy.
Yeah.
Worked with great people.
So you didn't get caught up in this, I got to go out and party and do all this stuff. I'm
the most boring person in the world, though. Like, seriously, like parties. I went to 2 parties in high school, and that was it. I didn't get it. I didn't understand why people kept on bragging about it on Monday morning, because I really didn't have a lot of fun.
Interesting.
So
good to recognize that.
Oh yeah. And and I've been lucky enough with that. I'm a pretty independent soul, so I know I'm not cool. I never strove to be strived. I don't know what the word is.
We'll pick one of those.
Yeah. And I don't strive for it now. So I was pretty self-assured even in my teens that I'm just going to go my own way, and you all do you, and that's fine if you want to party, but that's not my thing.
Well, helping people like so early. So you got your master's, you do your dissertation after you moved to BC.
So I moved to BC after my coursework. So we got married, and then we got married on a Saturday. And then Wednesday we were living together because he was in BC already.
Yeah.
And so we'd never lived together. So come Wednesday we became a married couple.
In hindsight, would you recommend this?
You know what? I cannot speak to anybody and what they do with their own relationship. Hopefully he doesn't hear this. Actually, he knows this. I've said this to him, his face. But if we lived together before we got married, there's no chance we'd have made it. To the altar. There's no chance.
Really?
I'd have choked him.
Really? Because he was at the beginning frustrating.
Yes, and equally so I'm frustrating, but I also know that I have little to no patience for a lot of things.
I see.
So I don't think I'm easy to live with, but no, because some days there was a legal binding contract that kept us together.
Yeah.
In the first couple of years where you go was I drunk when I got married? What the hell, man?
This is probably a common experience for newlyweds.
I think so. And because we didn't live together, we had nothing, and we had spent our whole 2 years of engagement and courtship at a distance. So we just had weekends.
Okay, yeah. Long distance relationship, it doesn't add up to much time together when you think about it.
And it's always honeymooning, right?
That's
you're so excited, and then you're missing, and
you don't get to see the reality of it. You
really don't.
Right? And somebody's dirty laundry.
I was just going to say, and he was awfully clean when I came to visit.
The figurative dirty laundry too, which maybe we can move on from. So newly married, now you're in BC and you're in a new place, and so you don't have any debt, but now you're married. Did you we don't have to talk about this. Did you assume any debt? Or
my husband came in with a student loan. Yeah. So, but funny enough, I mean, we were married in the Orthodox Church, and so similar to many other religions, they require, before you say I do, you got to do marriage prep. So we did marriage prep, and it just unfortunately wasn't done well. They didn't talk about money. So
really,
we didn't talk about this. Honestly, we've been married. It'll be 20 years in July. I don't know how some days we've managed to stay married. Not that we don't get along, but we just didn't know this stuff before we got married. So I think both of us have we're loyal and we're committed, but wow, we had to work through a lot of stuff around money. So when we got married, it was like, oh, hey, we're in love. We'll just put everything in one account, and then we'll just hope for the best.
Because that was just what you were told, or what?
Well,
you
and
knew?
that's what what I thought my parents did. But again, we didn't have any kind of money conversation. I don't think Brad, that's my husband, Brad, his parents had that conversation with him. So I think we were just trying to fumble forward and do our best. And it was an epic disaster.
I don't know if that's how it happens now in the Orthodox Church, but would they talk about personal finance now, do you think?
I don't know that. I really don't.
It's so important, though.
Yeah, that's a dream job. Other than studying Nina Simone, that's a dream job, is to teach marriage prep. I'd love to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And not not the religious stuff. That's not my business. Your soul is your own business. The how to communicate, how to figure out your money, how, talk about the in-laws and sex and kids and blah, 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 blah.
We did a lot of reading.
Did you?
John Gottman, I think, wrote how marriages succeed or why marriages succeed and fail. He actually studied married couples for years and scientifically figured out who was going to get divorced or not. And
no
apparently he was right. like, because he did the study.
Right.
You know, he can only talk to his own study, but
Yeah.
it was legitimate enough, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so he does have a lot of gender issues, like in terms of assigning certain things to gender roles.
Sure.
But other than that, communication was a big key. He could witness people communicating with each other, like just in the kitchen about something in the fridge, and he would know like what their result would be.
Was that the one where it's like contempt? Like if there's contempt in the communication, like it's pretty much like
That's
you're,
right. It's
you're
the
dead.
4 horsemen. So contempt, I think, is a big one, and I can't remember the other. Well, criticism is
Yes.
part of that as well. If you avoid these things, then you'll be fine if you don't ever let it get that far. And so that's very interesting stuff, but none of this is about money.
No.
It's one of the biggest things. And just to skip ahead, do you get a lot of married couples come in to the company? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I remember. So when I first started at work at Credit Counselling Society, I had the privilege of coming in as the program director. So I was leading the counseling team.
Yeah.
And I got to meet with clients, which was amazing. And I remember I was meeting with the wife, and her sister came in, and she had said, like, things are going south. My husband is ready to... No, she hadn't told the husband, forgive me. She had secret debt. Sister knew about it, was coming in to
secret
support
debt.
her. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Marriage, like, what is it? Financial infidelity.
Yeah.
Right? So she had this big pile of secret debt, and she could only resolve it if the husband knew and helped her out. Or she'd have to go down a very different path. And so I said, like, you have to talk to him. You know, here's what you can talk about, but you have to talk with him. They booked a second appointment. Now it was just her and the husband coming in. And she called me just before the appointment and said, you know, I hope you're good because he's ready to divorce me.
Oh,
so, yeah, we get a
man.
lot of couples coming in.
Yeah, that's a betrayal, right? I mean, financial
Sure it is.
betrayal is huge.
Yeah.
And it may make you think, like, well, I don't know anything about this person now. If they kept that from me, it's almost on the same level as someone cheating on you.
Well, it's cheating with your credit card,
It
right?
really is, right?
What I recognize, you know, certainly having been married for as long as I have, is that what shows up on the surface, right, like the tip of the iceberg, that's what other people get to see. So, yeah, it is a betrayal and all of that. But there's stuff underneath the surface that drives that behavior, right? And the key is to figure out what's driving the lies and the deceit and the not being able to tell the truth about whatever it is.
So just to stay in the future for a sec. So it's not really so much about figuring out, you know, how to, you know, get the payments down or how to reduce the interest or how to figure out how to reorganize as much as it is addressing the problem. Do you get a chance to do that, though?
We do. We do in some respects. I mean, granted, you know, when people are coming to see a credit counselor, they're often coming in because they're in a jam.
Yeah, that's
right.
it,
The water is now either at their chin, at their nose, or above their eyebrows. What we need to do is deal with, you know, the situation at hand first. So that oftentimes is the numbers and the interest rates and et cetera. But, you know, we can then start to talk about, like, what brought you here? How long has this been going on? But I think that's where, like, in my department, because I shifted over into education in 2012, I think that's where we can have more impact.
Preventatively?
It is. It's the prevention versus crisis intervention.
So giving them information so that they can figure this stuff out on their own, or perhaps even pointers to wherever they need to go so they don't get into financial trouble first.
Exactly. Or if they're in, they can figure out a way out, or they recognize they need some help. I think where our whole financial industry has failed Canadians is we talk about the facts and the numbers and the interest rates and APR and all these different titles and names, but we haven't talked about the heart of money. I mean, the irony for me is that, you know, I actually have a learning disability around numbers and math. So working at, you know, Credit Counselling Society seems, that's interesting.
Yeah, but it's not, but you're not going to do the calculations necessarily.
No, and I'm not the accountant, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, thank goodness for all of us that I'm not the accountant. But, you know, what we can talk about, and I think what I can bring is we can talk about the relationship, right? The relationship that you have with your own money, and then the relationship you have with your people and money. We can talk about that because I think when we get under the surface and understand our history, we all have parents, like it or not. Whether you like them or not doesn't matter. But you have them, and you were raised with a certain way with money, so you have a certain history. If you don't acknowledge the rearview mirror,
I've learned this more and more doing coaching. It's, you know, really the part of the money part, like we're going to get it all organized. And then let's say maybe they're already organized, and then determining where to put the money. That's
the
easy. Conversation right at the end.
Yeah.
It's like everything before that drives what to do. It's like you can't figure out how much money you have if you don't know what to do with it, and you don't know what you want to do with your money in the future. And so let's work on that stuff. It's really, that's so much more important, which makes sense that you would be coming from you don't have a degree in commerce or anything like that. Like you said, the numbers. And so, okay, let's go back back to you're 24 or so, and you don't know anything about personal finance really at this point, but you want to help people, and you have been helping people. Do you get into this helping in financial space right away, or no? Is there a lot of space in between?
There was space in between. So I started, as soon as I got married, I moved out to BC, and then 2 weeks later, I had a job as a youth care worker. Okay. So I was doing a wake night shift with 2 young girls who had been severely abused and unfortunately had significant behavior problems. So they were with us. They were level 3. So they were with us, or they'd be in custody. Wow. Yeah, they were pretty intense. Okay. And so I did that for 6 months, and then my husband luckily got a job, or he got transferred. He actually worked in the banking system, or he worked for a bank for a while. Okay. He got transferred to Kamloops. So we picked up and moved, went across the Coquihalla, and moved to Kamloops. And that's where I started in the employment industry. So I've always been a very solution-focused kind of girl. Like, I'm pretty practical. Sure. And so this, I'm not interested. I don't have the training, and I'm not really interested. Like, let's lay on the couch and let's talk about our mothers. Like, that therapy is really... You don't want to do that. That's important, but it's not my thing. So worked for an employment counseling firm. First is the receptionist, because, as far as I'm concerned, all work is noble unless you're a pimp or a drug dealer. Got to start somewhere. That's right. Absolutely. And it really is the best place to start is right up at the front. That's right. It's hard. I remember I had one employment counselor that said, "Oh, my stapler's empty. Like, could you fill it?" So being from Alberta and wearing, the shit on the outside of our shoes, what I wanted to do is staple her head. But I didn't. I just told her no, I wasn't available to do that. But it was great to meet clients. And then I got a job as an employment counselor. So this is where I actually get to work with clients. And I don't smoke, but if I did, that would be, it was just it was just such a great job. And this is people who do not have jobs? That's right. They didn't have jobs. Yeah. They were on employment insurance. Okay, so the government had set them over for job search help. So this is specifically working with the government, as a third-party agency? That's right. We were a contractor. Yeah. That's right. But it's people who have been referred to you by the government, or they're on a list, the EI list. That's right. It's mandatory counseling? Those were, no, and those weren't mandatory at that point. So, but they could come see us, and then we would assess their situation and then refer them to services within the community. Okay, and how do you get connected to those services? You got somebody going out and figuring out who has jobs? Yeah, that's exactly it. So, and in that community, it was, I wouldn't say it's a small community, but it's a tight-knit community in terms of the social services available and what's available to people out there. So, oh God, it was a great job. I had a fantastic boss. Sometimes the boss makes the difference, and the job was really cool, but my boss was really great about giving feedback, and she'd get the old red pen out on my file. And this is back in the day where paper notes, it's file folders, not the computer system. And she'd red circle my notes and then give me some feedback, and it was fantastic to just not take it, she never made it personal. I did a bad job. No. It was just, here's what here's something else to think about. And so it was a really great lesson on accepting feedback and accepting it graciously, because she gave it graciously. So that was a great job. And then my husband got promoted, and we moved to Vancouver Island. Okay. So we hopped on the ferry and moved out there. And so you're open to opportunity. Obviously, you're open to different experiences. This seems to be a theme. Yeah. Right? It seems to be a theme married to my husband that I'm open to. But I love that. I mean, we've had an opportunity to live in really cool places. Well, that's a good point. I wonder, in terms of, you might have just stayed at that great job, right, and moved up in that organization. Possibly. We knew that Kamloops, because both of us were still pretty young, not that we're old, but we were in our 20s. We knew that we wanted to develop our careers further. So we didn't think that Kamloops, because it's not isolated, but it's contained. Yeah. We didn't think that it would happen necessarily in Kamloops. So we took the opportunity and went to Vancouver Island, and again, still worked in employment counseling and loved it. We'll get into your personal finances. Are you learning anything about personal finances as well? Not at all. Not at this point. No? No. You're not, you're just cooking them up with jobs and their skills, exactly. But there's no talk about hey,
if you lose your job again, here's something you could do to like
It
build an
didn't-
emergency fund. That's not even part of it yet.
It didn't even cross my
No,
mind, which
okay.
is terrible. Like now that I look back on that,
Yeah.
I think like, what the hell? How did you not talk about that? But it wasn't part of the mandate of the program. It certainly wasn't part of my personal experience. Like my husband and I were just trying to fumble forward and figure it out.
Yeah.
So no, it didn't come up at all.
It's funny how we're hitting all of these things and nobody's talking about money.
No.
And I feel like that's a great opportunity to mention. Would you like if
Oh,
you
yeah.
went back? Would you or even now? Would you say employment counseling?
Absolutely.
Right?
In fact, we try to work with employment agencies
Sure.
and work search centers
Okay, yeah.
to actually train their staff.
Train their staff.
Yeah, we have a workshop called Financial First Aid for Service Providers.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's helping them understand what the rights and responsibilities are of, consumerism and especially debt, and then what to do with collection calls for their clients.
Yep,
What
okay.
happens when that client cannot pay? So if they're on social assistance, we talk about the fact that they're protected and what that looks like a communication strategy. And then we talk about, here's some resources in the community so that if you or your client needs more help, here's some safe places they can go. So yeah, I think we should be having this conversation all the time.
In every situation.
In school, in post-secondary, in the workplace, in work search centers.
Did something trigger like you learning about your personal finances, or was it through work?
Well, what's interesting is that I remember when high school, when I got my driver's license, I was driving around a new development around town. And, there's these beautiful, what I perceived as beautiful homes, 2 cars in the garage, and the kids are playing hockey and dance.
Sure.
And I would always go like, what do they do for a living that gets them that life?
Yeah.
I couldn't understand it.
Okay.
And now I get it.
Yeah.
Most of them are in debt.
That's right.
Right? Like not every Canadian, but a
No.
lot of Canadians are in debt. So I didn't get it. And then when I was in my 4th year of my first degree, we had a practicum, and a friend of mine, a girlfriend, she actually went to Credit Counselling Services of Alberta,
Okay.
which is now Money Mentors.
Oh, sorry, that's changed now.
Yeah, and so she did her practicum there, and I thought that was really cool. But moved on,
Yeah,
whatever.
it didn't stay in your mind.
That's right. And then when my husband and I moved back to the mainland after the island, and I was still managing an employment center, and then I got promoted into a director role, so I was doing training and development.
Okay, yeah.
And then I was asked to teach at UBC as a sessional. A professor I knew got really sick from a conference she went to. So she had, I think it was called triple pneumonia. So
Oh, wow.
the doctor said, look, sweetie, you're at home or you're in the hospital. You
Yeah.
can make your choice. So she chose home, obviously. And they asked me to come in and teach her 2 classes. A guest speaker from the Credit Counselling Society came in.
Okay.
She was the director of education, Julie Jaggernath.
That's you.
It was, yeah, that's right. And she came in and she did her chat, and then we grabbed coffee, and she said, we're looking for a program director. And I said, well, I might be interested. So I met the CEO, and then slipped him a 20. And then I met the VP and CEO for a second interview, and then I got the job. And that's where, then it really hit home. Because, we were figuring out our finances, but not in any kind of logical sense.
You're paying the bills.
We're paying bills. We're not getting, there's no catastrophe and no emergency,
That's
so
right.
things are okay.
Because you're both working and you're both fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of financial planning by happenstance,
That's right.
It's kind of like career planning by happenstance.
Well, yeah, a lot of people, they're just amassing a lot of money in the savings account, don't know what to do with it, right? Because they're making it. Maybe they're frugal. They don't have a lot to spend. They don't have a lot of desires to blow their money.
Yeah.
So sometimes it just happens to work out.
Yeah.
And then we can be more efficient with their money.
Sure.
And, figure out what they want to do with it, but they're not in trouble.
Yeah.
Per se.
And that wasn't us. We weren't in trouble, but we weren't certainly amassing a lot of
Okay.
money. Because we had moved, my goodness, by our 5th anniversary, we had 9 homes.
Okay.
Not buying and selling,
No,
but we
just
had
renting?
renting and moving all over
Yeah.
the place. So, we were just kind of figuring it out, but we weren't.
So maybe you're spending things that you didn't need to spend
Yeah,
necessarily,
and-
or not looking for the efficiencies.
No. And, just also trying to figure out how do we do this as a couple?
Okay.
Because financial, handling your own finances as an individual, if you're single, is one thing, right? You just have to live with your own consequences.
That's right.
But when you are sharing your life and your bed and your bank account now with another person, and apparently you have to compromise and collaborate, as I roll my eyes like a 15-year-old. That gets a whole lot harder, that there's now someone else to consider.
That's
and
right.
Apparently he's got an opinion as well.
So you have to negotiate when you want probably anything more than $100,
Yep.
Of spending, because that could be used for something maybe better according to the other person. So you're navigating that, but you take this job because this is what you do. You're putting together programs and you're helping people, and that's what this was. Like you're good at organizing and the solution-based stuff that you're talking about, right? You're looking for solutions. And this was like, we're going to fix people's debt problems.
Well, it was really cool. Yeah, because I had been interested in university, like I had said, with my friend doing
you
the
thought
practicum.
It was cool that she
I
was
did,
doing that. Yeah.
but just moved on from it. And then when this, literally dropped in my lap, I wasn't, I had never considered going to the Credit Counselling Society because I'd never heard of them.
Yeah.
But really, like immediately when I walked in, I knew that my values aligned for the higher purpose of like I was meant to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you're putting together programs. Are you working with people specifically at this point, or are you just putting together the things that other people are doing, like counselors?
Right. So I've got the team. So I inherited a really great team of counselors, and then I got to see clients as well. And counseling is a pretty individual activity, right? It's like coaching, because I'm a coach as well. Like it's you and that person, and you create the plan, whatever the plan is, depending on what they brought in and what's going on for them. But it was so fascinating to see, all the different stories, all the different budgets, and hear, it solidified for me that money's not about the money until it is about the money, but money is about how you feel about it.
Absolutely.
And it's your relationship with money that makes the difference.
And everything else in your life, incidents affect money.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Mental health and, for me, addiction.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, of course, this is a very personal topic for me because I went through a consumer proposal, 11 years ago now. So a scenario then. So it's 2008 and I'm like $40,000 in debt, and I come to, instead of Hoyes Michaelos, which I found, to do my proposal, I come to the Credit Counselling Society, which may or may not have been in Ontario, which I think probably it was.
It wouldn't have been at that time.
Not at that time. But let's say I'm in BC.
Sure.
Right? So I go in and I find your website or whatever, or find somebody, and I go in and I say, I'm $40,000 in debt. I got a gambling addiction. I don't know what to do. Like, take me through the scenario.
Sure.
What do I meet with a counselor?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. You'd meet with a counselor. I mean, you do the call in to book an appointment. Yeah. And we'd get your contact information, and then you'd book an appointment with a counselor, and that could be done in person, because some people like the to see people's eyes and have that personal contact, and others actually prefer a bit more anonymity, so they can do it by telephone.
Yeah,
right?
it's tough, right? There's a lot of stigma.
Oh.
I didn't know what I needed, but I knew that I needed help, and it took me a long time to get help. So this is $40,000 in credit card debt, like probably up around 18-20%.
Sure.
So I can't even make the minimum payments.
Yeah, the water's up at your nose.
So what are the options that you, like, for my specific situation at that point, but also in general, like, what are the options when somebody comes in with like unmanageable debt?
Sure. So, and manageable and unmanageable is entirely personal, right? On your lifestyle and your income, et cetera. So, when I'm working with people, I'm looking at, first of all, like, what brought them here? How did you get to make that really tough call to call us? Because I think we're one of the hardest phone calls to make.
Sure.
Because money is not, like, when you break your foot, you go to your doctor and you with a broken foot, and hopefully you get a cast and you get healed. But there's no stigma attached to it. You just broke your foot.
Yeah. There's no shame in having a broken foot.
But when you have money problems, you are... like the feelings of shame, embarrassment, stupidity, worthlessness, like it's hopelessness. It's awful. And that's what spirals people into staying isolated and not getting the help.
And on top of that, it was mine was caused by something that I did, right? Whether it was my fault or not, I caused this. It wasn't like, there was an accident and something happened and now I'm in debt and I can't manage it. I did this.
Yeah. And that's typical with most financial situations, because sometimes, life just takes a swipe at us and we're not prepared. And, And so what what I'm looking at is, what brought you here, and what do you want?
Yeah.
As a coach, I really like to get into what do you want out of this appointment,
Sure.
and what do you want in the future, so that we're working towards something positive, as opposed to, because we could spend 5 hours talking about how bad things have been, but then you just feel worse, right?
Yeah.
So to me, and I learned this in coaching, like you get it, I take a couple minutes of backstory, and then we're moving on into, we're stepping into our front wheels.
Okay.
And we're moving forward into, let's get some solutions under our belt.
Yeah.
So, we look at income, assets, liabilities, monthly expenses, and all the monthly expenses, not just the ones like I can carry in my head in the car. We're talking like 2 full pages of monthly expenses.
So we sit down and we go through all that. And
the irregular ones that you forget about.
That's right. The annual ones that only come once a year.
Yeah. And then we look at all the debts. So, who do you owe? How much do you owe? What's your interest rate? And where are you at with your payments? And with all of that information, like the numbers will literally dictate the solution, Bo. So with that information, then some options can present themselves.
Yeah.
So I find that options typically fall into 3 major categories. The first is you can handle it on your own, like the DIY.
Sure.
There are different ways to do that, right? Budgeting, so increase your income, decrease your expenses, or do both. You can sell assets. Whether that's jewelry, art, antiques, a home.
Yeah, maybe your house. A lot of people don't even realize how much equity they have, right?
Especially out here.
Yeah. Sometimes
it's selling assets. Sometimes it's conventional financing. People are intimidated to go talk to their banker.
Yeah.
And so we encourage them, if their credit's still decent and they've got some capacity, maybe you can go do that. And then we can teach them how to budget.
Yeah.
So it's a concurrent solution.
So all of this stuff, if they are just like not knowing what to do, it might give them the push to be like, okay, now I have some accountability. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take care of this. We still haven't addressed like why I got in debt in the first place. Maybe that's something that you can't help with. Maybe you can. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But in any case, you're giving them something structured that they can do. Meanwhile, they were just like, okay, now I'm in trouble and I don't even know how I got there.
People don't understand their options, right? And that's only one set of options is when you can handle it on your own.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then you might look at what's called a debt management program.
Okay.
So that's a voluntary program where, and we can do that because we're licensed debt poolers, where we restructure unsecured debts.
Okay.
So we will send proposals out to creditors on that consumer's behalf. If assuming they accept, which they typically do, then that consumer stops paying their creditors. They're aware of that, and that's okay, because now they make monthly payments to us, and we disperse those funds on the client's behalf to their creditors at a restructured rate.
Okay, so this sounds a lot like a consumer proposal.
Similar, but yeah, you're paying 100% of the principal back, but you get a cut on the interest. So all the big banks that everybody complains about actually drops interest rates from like 19 point whatever down to 0.
0 even.
The payday loans that everybody wants to eliminate go down to 0.
So you can do that with payday loans too.
Absolutely.
So because they will stop and they know that you're going to pay them.
Exactly.
So they're cool with that. They know they're going to get the regular payments.
And then that client's out of the payday loan cycle too.
So they have interest relief, which is a lot of what is making their debt unmanageable.
Yeah.
So this is like the next option. You can afford to pay 100% of the whatever the principal is. Maybe the interest is starting to kill you, and if it keeps going up, you'll pay it down in 92 years or whatever it says at the bottom of your statement, right? So, and you have the relationship with banks and other financial institutions that you can help them get that down. Now, like you said, the budget and all of the information from the person will dictate whether they can afford the principal payments.
Absolutely. And it really is, it's about the numbers. If they can't afford it. I remember I had a single mom with 2 kids when I was counseling, and she desperately wanted to do the debt management program, but she couldn't afford it. She needed to go bankrupt. Things were just too far for her. The sad part is if she had come to see us a year earlier, she probably could have afforded it. Yeah. But, we also, for me, it's always about taking as much responsibility as you can. And the numbers will dictate how much you can take responsibility. Yeah. Because to, drink water and eat cheap for the next 5 years so you can pay off your creditors and your kids, have to live this kind of austere lifestyle isn't really the intention, right? Yeah, that might be taking responsibility, but at what expense?
Yeah, really. Because I remember when I did the budget for my proposal, there was stuff in there in the budget that I wouldn't even consider. There was a budget for savings.
Sure.
Because, what am I going to do the next 5 years and not save a dime?
That's right.
That's a terrible way to expect. You should expect somebody to be able to save some decent amount of money, even if that means it makes them not be able to afford their credit card payments,
Yes.
because that's like a regular, like reasonable life to live. And so I did like that. And yeah, mine proved that I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't make the monthly payments.
No.
I think they were $1,000 a month for minimums or something like that. Mine was a very it's not unique, but it was very specific.
Sure.
Because it was gambling addiction, and so it wasn't like things just got out of hand by living life. It accelerated quickly for me. So the option, if the debt management doesn't work, do you have another option that reduces?
We don't.
No.
We can help the occasional consumer with a settlement. So let's say Jimmy owes $10,000, but Aunt Gladys gave him $5,000, to settle it. We could help him settle it if there's a good reason.
Okay.
If it's just because Jimmy wants to save $5,000, respectfully, that's not our role.
Who decides the reason?
The reasons need to be like, this is the best option I've got available to me. Because I've got this $5,000, for example, I can offer that out as a settlement because I can't work, or I've gotten hurt, or I'm sick, or I'm retired, or whatever. That's the best option their creditor's going to get.
So you'll propose that to the creditor.
We will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they may or may not take it.
Exactly.
And is it true, because I was just reading this, for the debt management program, can the creditors decide to stop accepting your proposal at any time? Is that like an option?
It is
they're not mandated by law.
They're
right?
not. That's right.
Yeah,
they're not mandated by law.
They
It's
made
not
an agreement with you.
That's right. It's not the orderly payment of debt, the OPD program, which is offered in Alberta.
Okay.
And that's a legislated program.
Okay.
So no, this is completely voluntary, and there are three volunteers: the consumer, of course, their creditors, and then us,
and you guys. Yeah.
And any can pull out at any time. But let's be realistic. The only person pulling out oftentimes is the client, right? Something's happened or they can't make their payments.
Yeah.
And by, call it 2, 3, or 4 payments, depending on the creditor's going like, this is a no-go for us.
So
they'll pull out then.
If the creditor decides for some ridiculous reason to say, oh, we don't like this deal anymore, they're probably going to end up getting nothing anyway because the person's going to go bankrupt.
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, so the creditors don't pull out unless payments get stopped, which I understand, right? Everybody needs to get paid into this, that's the point of volunteering for the program as a creditor. But so they won't pull out just for any reason. They'll pull out because of non-payment, basically.
Okay.
So if we need to close down the program, then we'll do our best to, get them back on track with their counselor or their client services rep.
Okay.
But sometimes life just takes a big fat crap on you.
Yeah.
And life just happens, right? And so, with the best of intentions, we have to close the program down, and then likely they're heading towards a legal solution.
So you'll then refer them
Absolutely.
to a licensed insolvency trustee.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Because that's a viable solution for some consumers, right?
As it was for me.
Exactly. Like the consumer proposal that you did.
Yeah.
And thank goodness that that's available.
It saved my life.
Sure it did.
I think it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because, finances, as you had said, it just goes over everything.
Yeah.
And being stressed about your money never makes life better. It makes your back sore. If you have a sore back, it's going to make it worse. If you have a headache, it's going to make it worse. And if you've got any kind of mental health, it will make it worse.
Yeah, I was stressed about trying to figure out why I was gambling so much. So when I did this proposal, it didn't cost me anything except for a ruined credit rating, which I welcomed at the time,
that's okay.
because credit was ruining my life. It really was. I wasn't making trips to the casino, the physical one down, I was getting on a bus. That wasn't for me. I didn't have the time for that nor the desire. It was all easily accessible online for me.
Yes.
That's how I was doing it. So credit cards were sort of the only way. Now, of course, I figured out a way to do it later in another relapse, but that's another story. Probably the most severe stopgap measure that I did, but it was still just a stopgap measure. It wasn't a solution. And I guess that's the big thing to note about all this is that you'll help them figure out whatever the debt solution is. So say it's a debt management program. Will you then refer them to any other help for psychological help, or will you continue to work with them? What's the process after that?
Yeah. So if they go towards a legal solution, be it a consumer proposal or bankruptcy, then they're moving towards that. That's right. And we will work with trustees only that obviously treat our clients with dignity and respect, and actually don't accept referrals from debt brokers
and don't get paid for that.
That's exactly it. We won't work with trustees that do that.
Good.
And then they have to do their mandatory counseling sessions there. But the clients clients are always welcome to come back to us, like whether that's, with us in education doing the free webinars. We offer $28 a month, or it's doing a budgeting session with a counselor. They can do that as well.
And they're open to that because they've been through, maybe you can give them the solution they needed, but you help them.
Sure.
And everything that you do is free.
It is
for the client.
It is, except the debt management program. So that if the client is doing the debt management program, we can go up to 5 years that they can pay it off. So, for as long as that client is working on that, we're in a relationship with them. They have a credit counselor that's theirs, and they also have a client services rep, and that's the person who's the go-between the counselor, the client, and the creditors. Mm-hmm. So they're negotiating on their behalf, and they're talking with the creditors if necessary. And then they've got access to the education team. So coming to, a local library workshop if they wish to learn how to budget. Or like I said, we offer 28 webinars a month that they can take, and those are all free and completely accessible.
And so, I guess is a good point to address how you get paid.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so as part of the debt management program, you will get paid?
Yes. So what happens is that if anybody comes to a credit counselor, for us, it's entirely free.
Okay.
So they can come see someone for free, and that's no problem. If they establish a debt management program, then there's a $75 setup fee. Okay. In Ontario, it's $50. We can waive it if necessary, but I see it more as a commitment fee.
One-time fee.
Well, it is a one-time fee in the sense of, when things are free, people opt in and opt out and get wishy-washy about things.
I hear you.
And there's a lot of work that's involved in establishing a debt management program, like administrative work, sending proposals, setting up the file, etc.
Yeah.
So if you want it, then you have to put $50 down.
Sure.
And again, if that doesn't work, if you're really strapped, we can slide it down or waive it. Yeah. But, we want to show that you're committed, or we want to see that.
Okay.
And then there's a 10% fee on the monthly deposit. So I'll give you two examples.
Yeah.
If, say, a consumer is paying $500 a month, then that would be $550. $500 goes back to the creditors, and we hold $50 back for lights, internet, salaries
to pay for
things, to pay for the work.
And they're at this point probably saving more than the $50.
Oh my goodness,
extreme!
They are,
right? Because there's a light at the end of the tunnel with a debt management program. You can see the fund, like you will be paid off by this date, which you can never see with a credit card.
That's right,
or anything like that. So, because you did all the work to organize, you figured out the payment plan, which is just the principal that's left, and then a fixed 10% on top of that to pay every time.
To a max. And it has a maximum.
It has a maximum.
It does. And what it will do as well is that, let's say somebody's got 3 teenage kids, and bless our teenagers, but they eat a lot of food.
Yep.
And if the kids are eating, the consumer out of house and home, that can get slid down or it can get waived with manager approval. So, that's the beauty about it being a nonprofit charity, is that we're not in business to make a profit on people's backs. But lights are not free, internet is not free, and neither are salaries, so we still need to pay for that as well.
And you get funding from the banks as well?
Yeah, so 70% of our funding, Bo, comes from creditor donations. So as we disperse funds through the debt management program to creditors, they will actually donate money back to keep the credit counseling free and the education free and cost neutral.
Yeah. So, and it's not specific. Oh, as you refer money to them, they'll give it back.
Sure, they'll give a portion back.
So it's a trade-off sort of thing.
It's actually considered a donation.
You work with all of it because you're a not-for-profit. It's a donation.
That's right.
That's good. I like the way that that's set up in terms of, you're taking the bank's money back and using it to re-educate people.
We are. So that we do, as I joke that, we love our clients. We just don't want to love them for a long time. Like respectfully, I don't want a 20-year relationship with a client. It clearly means I'm not doing my job. Like we want them to figure it out and be happy and move on. Hopefully they have fond thoughts of us, but move on and have a happy life. That's success.
Yeah, and it's like the banks wouldn't do this themselves, right? If you just went to them and said, right? So there's so many options out there, right? Like payday loans were created to be better than loan sharks, right? I mean, like, funny enough, it was supposed to be a better option, right? I would never, ever want anyone to do that, right? And, I don't want anyone to go through a debt management program, but it's better than they're paying 20% on credit cards forever.
Sure.
It's like there's stages as you go, right? And then, of course, the proposal that I did, it's good in that it saved me money, but it ruined my credit for 7 years, including the time that took to pay plus the time afterwards. But it also gave me time to figure out stuff and save money. But if you could pay legally, maybe that's not the option for you. And also, maybe you don't want to ruin your credit because you maybe just need to reorganize, as
Sure.
you said, the counseling, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about proposals that I want to mention is that there are fees, but they're all included in the amount that you negotiate, right? So for me, it was 40,000 went down to 15, and out of that 15, then that gets distributed amongst the insolvency trustee. The government gets 5% of that. The trustee gets 20%, and then the rest of it goes to the creditors. But I didn't care about that because it was
You had a solution.
50 payments of $300.
Yeah.
And that, it saved me $25,000. And as somebody just commented online, somebody paid that $25,000. But it wasn't me. And the banks have huge budgets for losses, potential losses, right? So they're ready for defaults, are they not?
There's an expectation of a certain percentage will default, right?
So we shouldn't feel bad about taking advantage of solutions, whether it be your debt management solution or proposal or bankruptcy.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I actually met with some clients last week and had said one of them needed to go bankrupt. And I had said, respectfully, your creditors will stay in business even if you go bankrupt on these debts.
Yeah.
So look, again, I go back to, it's about taking the responsibility that you financially can afford to, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes that is paying it all and paying with interest. Fair enough. That was the agreement. But sometimes life gets in the way. So maybe, if we go down the line of intervention, maybe the next is you can pay 100% of the principal, like a debt management program, but you need a break on the interest rates. And maybe you can't pay for your, in your example, you can't pay the 40,000, but you can pay 15.
That's right.
Over the course of 5 years. Okay, that's still taking responsibility. And
Partial,
sometimes, but it's still, you
bankruptcy would have been 0.
Well, or a little bit,
little
right?
bit, yes, a little bit, yeah.
And sometimes that's the only option, and that's okay. Ideally, though, we're not wrapping around and keeping on the same solution. I remember I met with this was years ago. I met with a credit union, and she said, "Yeah, we don't need your services. Our clients don't, because I just helped my client, yesterday with the 5th consolidation loan." So luckily there's a filter between, Stacy's inside voice and what she says out loud, and the door was down. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh, sweetie, that's not helping. That's enabling.
That it is.
You're enabling the problem.
Because when you consolidate, say, credit cards into a loan, you're opening up the credit card balances, right? And then, of course, that's why the 5th one happened, because they kept racking it up again.
That's right. Now, luckily, most financial institutions will require you to close them down, but not all, and not at that point.
Yeah.
So, it was crazy.
I had to cut mine up, I had to hand them over. I had to hand up over my credit card.
When I was counseling, I would hand over the scissors, and, and we have, buckets of cut up credit cards all over the place as part of the decor in our office. And for the Christmas tree, there's cut up credit cards with tinsel around them, as decorations. It is what it is. But I remember one client said, well, no, you cut them up. I'm like, no, I didn't get boots out of this. No, this is yours. You get to cut them up.
Yeah,
it's not my job.
Yeah, and I do have to give a shout out to the secured credit card people.
Absolutely.
Because, People's Trust in BC, they're the only ones who would help me. I tried even partway, actually after I'd paid off my proposal, to try to get a secured credit card from TD. And they wouldn't, because they have very strict.
They do.
They said I think I had to be out of the proposal for 2 years or more, or have it completely cleared. And so every bank and every institution has their different policies and what kind of risks they're going to take. It's hardly a risk if I give somebody $500 and then they give me $500 in credit.
That's right. It's no risk.
But for TD and other banks, I'm sure, giving them $500, they were still felt it risky, even though they could have paid it off with my $500. I don't understand that policy specifically, but that's why you need to be able to rebuild your credit.
Absolutely,
it's nice to have the options out there. And maybe just they didn't like how many credit cards that I had defaulted on.
And to your point, every financial institution there's Equifax credit scores, there's TransUnion, stuff, but then they also filter it through their own system and create their own scores, right? Yeah. And again, to your point, it's based on their policies, and some are a little more risk adverse, and some are a little less risk adverse.
True.
But the rebuilding credit. And that's the thing. Everybody not everybody. My husband accuses me of doing the everybody and always and never.
Me too. I do that.
Always, Stacy.
Is it really always?
A lot of people think that, credit's everything. Credit is what it is, right? It's a weapon or a tool. It just depends on how you use it.
The banks made it.
Absolutely.
Right?
So you can live without it, Or you can use it wisely, or you can use it not wisely, and then you get into trouble. But, it goes up and it can go down as well. But the beauty about low credit or bad credit is with good behavior and time and some patience, you can actually build it right back up.
Yeah, my score is 836
Yay.
now. Well, with TransUnion. You know what? I don't know. Equifax has a different score.
They do have
They're up in
different.
the 730 something, but maybe 780 or 760. But still, these were both great credit scores. I'm
Sure.
not complaining,
Yeah.
right? But that tells you how different even the two credit reporting agencies are.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, how it's just more about making sure that you make responsible decisions and not being too fixed on your credit score either. Oh, I got to get it up here. What did I do?
You don't.
know?
Yeah. Well, and when I teach, we have a workshop called The Truth About Credit. And I say to, my clients, like, look, I don't actually worry about my credit score unless I'm about to buy a home or a vehicle.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it goes up and down every couple of weeks. So I'm not going to sweat it. What I am going to sweat is my credit report.
Yes.
Because if that's
Accuracy.
accurate, that will feed the credit score.
Absolutely.
But if it's not accurate, then decisions are getting made on my behalf based on inaccurate information.
And I'll take the opportunity to say that you should review it, and especially after you've been through anything like a proposal or any sort of thing that puts a mark on your report, don't just assume it's going to clear.
Oh,
right?
goodness.
They both cleared the proposal from my reports, but they left associated credit cards there that said that they were cleared by proposal.
Really?
So I'm like, how can you clear the main thing but not the associated things? Like, it should be just automatic.
Sure.
So I had to write them a couple of times, both agencies, in order to clean it up. But that's your responsibility to do that.
And there are mistakes all over credit
all
reports.
over the place.
Yeah, so I think you're bang on. People should not assume that their credit report is good. They should check it to make sure that it's accurate.
Yes.
And if it is, great. If it's not, then you got to go fix it.
So it seems like you learned all of this on the job. Am I
really
right?
did.
Yeah.
Oh my god, my training. My training consisted of an hour with the CEO, and then I got to observe some of the counselors. And then as they're working with clients, I'm like figuring out my notes for training, but then I'm also in my head going, this impacts me personally. This is how I'm going to change things. Oh, I learned everything I've learned about money by working at the Credit Counselling Society. Thank goodness.
Learn
right?
learn by teaching.
Well, I learned by people teaching me, and then, I appreciate when people are willing to tell their story, like we're talking about today.
Yeah.
And talk about, some hard times that they've gone through, because I think that in the financial industry, we're so used to the business suits and the desk and the expertise. Well, when it comes to money and shame and embarrassment, the last thing I need is a quote unquote expert. I need someone who's real and who's willing to talk about mistakes that they've made and, give me some advice, but it's based on real life, not just what the books say. And I think that's a failing in the industry. I think we need to be a lot more real.
It's not about like finding the best investment strategy either. That's like the conversation to have once you got everything else taken care of. It's like, oh, if you just put this money in here and get 10%, you'll be fine. No, well, let's just figure out how to spend less than you make first, which is one of the toughest things, as simple as it sounds, isn't it?
And the thing is that, when people say, because we have a workplace program called Money Smart Living, and so when we're talking with HR, they say, are people don't have financial problems? Or if they do, that's okay, they can go to the EAP. And so we have a workshop called Financial First Aid for HR Professionals, part of it is, do you know where your EAP is sending people? Well, no. Okay, then part of your homework is you need to go find out, because oftentimes EAPs will send a consumer who's got financial problems to a financial planner. So financial planning is valuable, but not when I've got financial problems, because the plan will fall apart before I walk out of the door.
That's right. They'll probably make a good plan and stuff, but they won't be able to address if you have debt problems. They might. Not all financial planners, but typically that's not their mandate. Well, a lot of them anyway. I spoke to a couple of good ones recently.
Yes.
But Employee Assistance Program, right? EAP, and usually in big corporations. Yeah.
Yes, or they'll send them to a licensed insolvency trustee.
Yeah.
So that, again, has its value, but that should not be the first place a consumer with money problems goes to. Now, granted, I own my bias, and I completely, and at the risk of shamelessly plugging the industry, if the water is anywhere near your chin, the first person you need to talk to is a nonprofit credit counselor. It doesn't matter if it's us, but they should talk, because there's neutrality, it's unbiased, and it's based on your numbers, will tell you what the solution is.
I just want people to know that there's options out there.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And you are right that it might be intimidating to go to a insolvency trustee. There's a lot of stigma surrounding that, right?
And let's be honest here, it's a business.
Yeah.
It's a business that makes money. I don't begrudge that. I make money as well. I don't volunteer at my job.
Yeah.
It's my job. So I don't begrudge anybody making money, but it is a business.
Yeah, they're all businesses. Even you're right. I mean, I fully acknowledge that, even though it's supported by the government and everything's mandated and controlled, say, in the trustee area, you're right. It is still a business. Hopefully, everybody is trying to make the right decision for everybody and not, the what's going to make people the most money. I think, there are good ones and bad ones. I'm not to say everybody, because there are people who, like you said, do get referral fees and do refer people for money. And in this business of debt management, that's not really the best policy.
It's really not, in the sense of, when you are vulnerable, when you are feeling embarrassed, and worse, when you are feeling shame about anything in your life, life's not going well, right? You're in a pretty dark place. And so the last thing you need is, to feel worse or to get into a worse situation, or a situation you didn't need to be in, like to get into.
Yeah.
So people will take the first, because they won't ask for help, right? We'll talk about sex. I mean, go out on Friday night and figure out what people are eavesdrop.
Everybody talks about everything but money.
But money. Like, I'm not showing my best friend, my pay stub or my debt load.
Right? Why not?
Yeah, why not? But I sure will talk about everything else, but I won't talk about that. So that, because I'm isolated, I'm ashamed of what's going on. I'm really stressed. I'm not sleeping. I will take the first life raft that comes to me. So that might be a good ad on the radio. It might be a Google search. I can pull up a lot of products and services.
Whoever pays the most for
right?
the ads.
Yeah, it could be a Transat ad, whatever. But because we haven't talked about it in school. We haven't talked about it in the workplace. I don't know who's the best. So I'm going to take the best ad and I'm going to go there. Well, you don't always end up in the best place.
Yeah.
So again, and I recognize the shameless plug, but that's where I encourage people, talk with a nonprofit credit counselor. They have literally no vested interest in what you do.
There is no risk. And I'm going to agree with you in that just explore various options. If you are at all concerned after meeting with a nonprofit credit counselor, then go somewhere else.
Find another one.
If if it comes up that you may be a candidate for a proposal or bankruptcy, then go talk to a trustee. That's free too.
Absolutely.
It's all free until you make a decision. You don't have to worry about it with the proposal or bankruptcy. I mean, there are a lot of things to consider for those, right? And I went through, the proposal. I always say it's free. It's free monetarily. You save a lot of money, but there's a lot of other costs to it.
You're paying. Yeah, there's costs, right? And there's fees associated with it as well.
Fees, but they're within, right? I would say there are fees. Everybody gets paid, right? Everybody's getting paid to do all this, right? You're getting a salary that's funded by the donations, right? Or the debt management fees, right? Those kinds of things, right? But everybody's just trying to help people get out of debt and educate them on how to not get into it. And I think as long as we all just play well together, right? And as long as we all recognize that there isn't one best place to go for anything, everybody's situation is different, and it's okay to talk to a bunch of different places, then I think we'll be fine. And you pick the place that's most comfortable for you. I think that's right. And I do like that you refer to trustees when
absolutely.
When if you're like, this is a clear candidate for a proposal, you're not going to try to talk them in to doing the other things.
They can't afford it.
And they can't afford it.
Yeah.
And it's good. Like, the numbers speak for themselves, right? And I believe the trustee will do the same. If they come in and say, you know what? Yeah, you got assets, you got other things. I don't think the proposal is right for you, and here's all the things. It ultimately is the consumer's decision. No one's going to force anybody into anything, right? And so they might say, hey, maybe you should just do this or that instead of filing this proposal. I feel like everybody that I know in the business is doing everything in the best interest of the client. Not everybody does do that, though.
There are some really great players out there, whether that's, trustees, credit counselors, bankers, financial planners, accountants, right? There are good mechanics and there are bad mechanics, and there are good doctors and bad doctors. So no industry is going to be absent of bad players.
Totally right.
The challenge is that helping people get enough confidence and enough self-assurance to ask the questions even when they're feeling dark and hopeless and ashamed.
Yeah.
Because I know when I feel ashamed, I'm not very resilient or creative, or I can't figure it out, right? And so that's where we want great players to go, you know what, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're not a bad person. Things just went sideways financially.
Perfect.
But you're actually still a really great person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's a great place to end it.
Cool.
thanks so much for coming
thank
here to
you.
the studio. Yeah, Credit Counselling Society. Give them a website.
Sure, it's www.nomoredebts.org, or they can call us at 1-888-527-8999, and it's a free session if they want to come talk about their money.
Great. I'll put those links in the notes. Again, so many options. I love it. Everybody's out to help. This is a really great talk. Hopefully, everybody gets out of debt.
I hope so, right? That's our goal. Our goal is to work ourselves right out of business. So,
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it, Bo. Thanks.
Right. And that was episode 86 with Stacy Yanchuk-Oleksy. So in the interview, I talked about the pros and cons of filing a consumer proposal with an insolvency trustee. Ultimately, I think it was an essential move for me, and I'm glad I did it. 11 years later, and everything's pretty great. My credit score is excellent, and I've been debt-free for a long time, and I feel fortunate to have been able to save a lot of money after I paid off my proposal in 2012. But there's one thing that I didn't mention that will never be fixed, and that's my relationship with the financial institutions that were involved with my proposal. I didn't think much of it until just recently, actually. If you've ever heard me talk about how I use credit lately, you know that now it's just a tool to make purchases easier and to get rewards. I basically pay my balance every week, if not every day. I buy two things more than anything else, groceries and gas. I don't have to explain groceries, and gas is because I drive for Uber a few times a week. I'm a huge fan of PC Optimum points, and now you can get them when you buy gas, so I'm like, I should get a PC Financial MasterCard and use that just for groceries and gas. I'll get so many more points for doing what I already do. So I applied for the card, and a letter comes in the mail the next week. It's not your typical approved or declined letter, but instead it says that I already have an account at PC Financial, and I should call them for more information. I'm thinking that's weird, and then I remember PC Financial was one of the financial institutions included in my consumer proposal 11 years ago. So I called them up, and they confirmed that my account was never closed, and it never will be closed. It will always be there with a note that says it was shut down due to a debt settlement or whatever note they have. The bottom line is that I'll never be able to get a credit card from PC Financial, no matter how much I want to collect more PC Optimum points. Not the end of the world or anything, but just something to keep in mind. If you've been through a proposal or thinking about it, even though your credit report is eventually cleared, you stay on the bank's blacklist forever. I can't confirm that this is always the case, but it wouldn't surprise me. Why would they take a risk that I might burn them again? I'm not the same person I was 11 years ago, but I still have to accept that my past actions have consequences that I can't fix, no matter what. If you like the podcast and want to see me get to episode 100 and beyond, please support the podcast by going to my Patreon site and becoming a patron. It's only a few bucks a week, but if enough people do it, it starts to add up. Head over to patreon.com/BoHumphreys if you're interested. I am now offering free 15-minute personal finance consultations online. I am a personal finance coach, so if you're looking for someone to help you get organized, head over to BoHumphreys.com and click on the banner to book a free 15-minute personal finance consultation. We'll chat about your situation, and you can decide if booking an hourly coaching session is something that'll help you get moving in the right direction. What I find is that a lot of people are right on the edge of doing something to improve their finances, and the ironic solution to making progress financially is to spend some money on a monthly coaching session. I have a personal finance webinar coming up next week on Wednesday, June 19th, 2019 at 12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Michelle Hung, the Sassy Investor from episode 70 of the podcast, will be joining me for a webinar we're calling Lunchtime with Bo and Michelle. If you ever wanted to ask me or Michelle a question about pretty much anything, this is your opportunity. To register for the webinar, head to bohumphreys.com/webinar. That's it for this episode. I'll be back next week with America's student loan debt expert and founder of The College Investor, Robert Farrington.